Caspian Reynolds awoke to the pungent smell of disinfectant that penetrated the cloudy fog in his head. He lay on the cot, tied with leather straps that dug into his wrists and ankles like old chains. The light from the only lamp above him flickered weak, irritating, as if someone had deliberately pulled a switch. He tried to turn his head, but his neck was stiff and his ears were buzzing, as if from a distant train. And voices. Thin, hissing, they crawled from the corners like spiders along the walls. "Nobody needs you, cause you're broken." "They're laughing." They whispered, intertwining, mocking. He closed his eyes, trying to push them out, but they only intensified, becoming louder, angrier. "She's with him. Right now. You won't do anything." "Shut up," he croaked, his voice as dry as sand. His throat hurt, as if he had been screaming for hours, although he did not remember it. "It's not me. It's you." The door of the room creaked, the rusty hinges groaned, letting the nurse through. She was young, about 25, with short brown hair and tired eyes that looked at him without much interest. In her hands, she held a tray, a syringe, cotton wool, a tablet. Her uniform rustled as she approached, footsteps echoing in the empty room. "Mr. Reynolds," she said, her voice soft but with a hint of irritation, like someone who is tired of repeating the same thing. "You need to calm down." "You screamed again." "Did you shout?" Cause twitched. The belts tightened. The skin underneath them turned red. "I didn't shout. It's them. In my head." She sighed, placing the tray on the metal table nearby. The tablet lit up, highlighting her face pale, with dark circles under her eyes. "It's a side effect," she answered without looking at him. "Medicines. You're too excited. Breathe deeply. Side effects?" He laughed, hoarsely, almost breathlessly. The sound bounced off the walls and came back to him like a mockery. "Do you even know what they did to me, Maria, and that bastard, Declan?" The nurse raised an eyebrow, but didn't react. She took the syringe and wiped it with a cotton swab moistened with alcohol. The smell hit Cass's nose, sharp as a blow, and he winced. "I'm not crazy," he growled, looking her straight in the eyes. "I know what they are up to. They changed my pills. I'm a diabetic girl, and they fed me some kind of rubbish. Mr. Reynolds," she gave him an injection. "No one is poisoning you. This is paranoia. You need to rest." "Paranoia?" The whisper in my head laughed, thin as glass breaking into pieces. "She's with him, cause. Right now, her hands are on him. Have you ever seen the way she looks at him? My wife. With this puppy." The nurse pulled out a syringe and threw it into a yellow container on the table. Her movements were mechanical, practiced, like a robot's. "I saw your wife," she said, already at the door. "She came yesterday. She said that you brought yourself down. Too much stress. She said that you were screaming about betrayal and shadows." "Shadows?" Kaz froze, his breathing hitched. He didn't remember talking about shadows. "Or did you remember?" Something stirred in my memory, a long figure in the corner of the bedroom, silent, watching. "I don't. It's not stressful. They are lying. Both." The door slammed, leaving him alone. The silence collapsed, heavy as a concrete slab, but the whisper remained. "You lost, Kaz. You're a weakling. She never loved you." He clenched his teeth, feeling the tears, no, not tears, rage burning his eyes. "He's not a weakling. He built bridges, heck, he carried his family through crises, even when his leg became a liability after that accident. He held them together, Maria, Siren, this house. Now what? Lying here, tied like an animal, while they share his life?" "I hear your thoughts," he whispered into the void, his voice trembling, but there was metal in it. "I know what you did." The whisper died down for a moment, as if listening, and then struck again, louder, angrier. "You can't prove anything. You're crazy. Your daughter won't even come." Cuz tensed, the belts dug deeper. Siren. His baby. Her laughter, her stubborn gaze, like his own in his youth. It was the only thing that kept him in this hell. Where is she? Why not here? He called her. He remembered it, a faint call from the house, before everything floated away. "The siren will come," he said louder, calling the voices to battle. "She knows I'm not crazy." She left you, like everyone else. The whisper continued, and Kaz screamed, wildly, loudly, until my throat burned. The belts cracked, but did not give way. He collapsed back onto the bed, breathing heavily, sweat running down his forehead, mixing with a smell of alcohol and hospital sterility. Silence returned, but now it was different, hidden, like an animal before a leap. Footsteps were heard outside the door. Light, fast, not like a nurse's. Kaz tensed, peering through the cloudy glass in the door. Someone was standing there. He could feel it, a cold, tenacious gaze, like that of a predator stalking its prey. A shadow flashed through the opening, tall, hunched, but fuzzy, like smoke. "Who's there?" he shouted, his voice breaking. "Maria, is it you?" The footsteps died down. Silence. And then the whisper returned, lonely, like an echo in a well. "I hear your thoughts, Kaz, and you won't get out." He closed his eyes, clenching his fists until it hurt. They think they've broken it, that he's gone crazy. But they were wrong. He's still alive. He lay there, listening to his heart pounding in his chest, like a car that refuses to stop. Memories were torn out in pieces like broken glass. Maria, her cold words. "You're paranoid, Kaz." Declan, his grin as he dropped in with the papers. The pills were small, cloudy, not the ones he had been drinking for years. He knew their taste, their weight. He was not a fool. But they convinced everyone, doctors, neighbors, even himself, for a while. He doubted until the voices began to whisper. Or are these not voices? Could it be his mind clinging to the truth? The door creaked again, and the nurse returned. She didn't look at him. She just checked the Roman 4 and tweaked something. Her face was stony, like that of someone who has seen too much. "You were mumbling again," she said without looking up. "About my wife. Calm down, or you'll have to add more doses." "Dose?" Kaz laughed, weakly but defiantly. "To keep me quiet? Is this their plan? No one is forcing you to be silent." She stepped towards the door. "This is a hospital. They are treated here. Are they treating you?" He jerked. The belts creaked louder. "Or are they finishing them off?" She left without answering. The lamplight flickered again, and Kaz stared at the ceiling, white as a shroud. He remembered the construction site the day when the beam broke, and he fell 10 meters. His leg was broken, but he survived. He lived to build on, to raise Siren, to hold Maria even when she grew distant. He didn't break then. It won't break even now. The whisper returned, but now it was weaker, like a distant wind. "You are alone, Kaz. Alone." He smiled wryly, but sincerely. "One? No. He has Siren, and if she's not here, it means she's struggling. Like him." Something rustled outside the window, not rain, not wind, but a low rumble, like the breathing of the earth. Kaz turned his head as far as he could and saw a reflection in the glass, not his own. A shadow, thin, with long arms, looked at him. He blinked, and she was gone. But the hum remained, pulsating in his bones. "I'll get out," he whispered, clenching his fists, "and you will pay." He closed his eyes, feeling his strength drain away, but there was a fire burning inside, weak but unquenchable. The sun streamed through the kitchen window, gilding the old oak table that Caspian Reynolds had carved with his own hands back in the days when he still believed that wood could hold a family together. It was a Saturday morning in the summer of 2005, and the air smelled of coffee and freshly cut grass from the backyard. He stood at the stove, wielding a frying pan where pancakes were sizzling fluffy, golden, just as the girls loved him. He was wearing an old apron that said, "King of the Grill," a gift from Maria for some long-ago birthday, and he was humming some Rolling Stones while he flipped the dough with a spatula. "Kaz, you're burning down the kitchen again." Maria's voice came from the threshold, harsh, but with a slight mockery. She entered, tying the belt of her robe. Her dark hair was disheveled from sleep, but her eyes were already burning with that spark that he had fallen in love with 20 years ago. "Am I sleeping?" He turned around, grinning, and winked at her. "This is a masterpiece, Mira. Pancakes like at Dixie Diner. Sit down, you'll try it now." She snorted, but sat cross-legged under the table. Her movements were fast, almost bold the way she always moved, as if the world had to keep up with her. Kaz placed a plate in front of her, adding a spoonful of honey on top. She loved sweets, even if she grumbled that it was for children. "You're trying too hard," she said, cutting off a piece. "I could have made do with cereal." "Flakes?" Kaz shook his head, sitting down opposite him. "My girls deserve better. This is the law." She rolled her eyes, but smiled briefly, almost reluctantly. He looked at her, feeling the warmth in his chest, as always when she was near. Maria was his hurricane, hot-tempered, unpredictable, with a tongue sharp as a razor. But he loved her like that. From the first meeting in a bar on the outskirts of the city, when she spilled beer on his shirt, and instead of apologizing, she said, "It's your own fault. Don't stand there like a pillar." He then disappeared. And since then, he did everything so that she would not need anything. "Dad," Siren's ringing voice burst into the kitchen like the wind. She was 6, and she burst into the room in unicorn pajamas, barefoot, with a messy braid. "I want 2, with chocolate. 2 with chocolate for the princess." Kaz stood up, picking her up in his arms. She squealed with delight, hugging his neck, and he felt his heart clench with happiness. Siren was his miracle. When Maria gave birth to her, he stood by her bed in the maternity hospital, holding her tiny hand, and swore to himself that he would give this girl everything: time, love, life, if necessary. "You'll spoil her," Maria said, taking a sip of coffee. "She's already bossing you around." "Who gave her this character?" Kaz winked, putting Serena on a chair. "You, Mira. She's your copy." "God forbid," she answered, but pride flashed in her voice. She loved Siren, Kaz knew that, but her love was different, sharp, abrupt, like a flash of lightning. His was deep, like a river, and he did not spare a drop. He returned to the stove, adding chocolate chips to Siren's batter. This was their ritual: Saturday: pancakes, laughter, conversation. He worked as an engineer at a construction site, putting in overtime so that Maria wouldn't have to think about money. She quit teaching after the wedding. She said that the school was stifling her, and he agreed. Let him live as he wants. Vacations in Mexico, new dresses, parties with girlfriends. He paid for everything just to see her smile. And when Siren was born, he only redoubled his efforts. A house, a car, dolls with dresses. His girls had to have the best. "Dad, can I have a dog?" Serena raised her head from her plate, her mouth smeared with chocolate. "Big, like Tom from the street. A dog?" Kaz laughed, sitting down next to him. "Who will walk her?" "You?" She pointed a sticky finger at him. "You are strong." "Strong, yes." He patted her on the head. "But Mom will say that this is unnecessary noise." "Mom always says no," Siren pouted, looking at Maria. "Really, Mom?" "Because I'm smart." Maria put down her cup, squinting. "The dog will bark, shit, and eat furniture. Do we need this?" "Necessary." Serena slammed her hand on the table. "Dad, tell her." "Well, Mira," Kaz turned to his wife, grinning, "maybe we can think about it. A puppy would liven up the house." "Revived?" She snorted, standing up. "It's nowhere more lively here." "You treat her like a princess, Kaz. She already thinks that the world revolves around her." "And he's spinning," he answered, winking at Serena. "Really, baby? Is it true?" She giggled, and Kaz felt the day getting brighter. He lived for this, for their laughter, their warmth. Even if Maria grumbled, he knew she loved these moments too. It just doesn't show. She went into the living room, turning on the TV, some kind of morning news broadcast. Kaz and Serena remained at the table, finishing their pancakes and arguing about what color the dog should be. He listened to her chatter, nodding. The years flew by like the wind over a construction site. Siren grew up from pigtails on pajamas with unicorns to a backpack with textbooks. With a dog, they finally took a Labrador, named him Buck, before the first disputes about where to go to study. Kaz was there every step of the way, fixing her bike, taking her to art lessons, sitting up at night, helping with her homework. He gave up everything for her, even when his back began to ache from long hours on his feet. Maria lived her own life. "Kaz, I'm going with Linda for the weekend," she said one day in 2015, standing at the door with a suitcase. Siren was in the backyard, throwing a ball to Buck, and Kaz was fixing the lawnmower. Vegas again. He wiped his hands with a rag, looking at her. You just returned 2 weeks ago. And what? She crossed her arms, her voice becoming hoarse. I need to unwind. You don't mind, do you? I don't mind, he shrugged, although there was a pang in his chest. It's just. Serena asked when we would all go somewhere together. Together? Maria snorted. You're with her just like a quokka. She's 15, Kaz. She can handle it. And I need to live. To live, he repeated, nodding. Okay, Mira, go. I'll figure it out here. She left, slamming the door, and he returned to the lawnmower, listening to Siren's laughter and Buck's bark. This was enough for him, her happiness, her voice. Maria will return, as always, with new dresses and stories, and he will greet her with a smile. It was easier that way. But everything changed in 2018. Kaz remembered that day like a lightning strike. He was driving to a construction site, it was raining, and the truck in front lost control. The beam fell off the platform and fell straight onto the scaffolding where he was standing. He fell. His leg cracked and his ribs cracked, but he survived. I made it through pain, surgeries, and months in a cast. Maria was there for the first weeks. She brought coffee, sat by the bed, even cried once. But then, "Cause I'm going to work," she said 3 months later, standing by their bed. He still limped, leaning on a cane, but could already get up. Serena was in college, studying to become a designer, and the house seemed empty without her. Work? He looked up from the book he was reading. For what? We have enough, Mira. I'm still on my feet. Enough? She crossed her arms. Her voice became sharp as a knife. I miss it, Cause. I can't sit at home like an old woman. I need communication, variety. I'm getting a job as a secretary in an office on Main Street. Secretary? He frowned, but nodded. Okay, if you need it. We need it, she snapped, going to the mirror to straighten her hair. And don't argue. I've already decided everything. He watched her get ready, a new dress, high heels, light makeup. She looked younger, more lively than at home, and he let her go, as always. Let him live. He could handle it with Siren, with the house, with the pain in his leg that ached every night. That day was the last normal one. Kaz went back to the stove and cooked dinner meatloaf, the way Serena liked it when she came home. He set the table and placed 3 plates, although he knew that Maria would be late. Serena called and said that she would come for the weekend, and he smiled, listening to her chatter about a new project. Buck barked in the backyard, chasing squirrels, and the sun set behind the trees, turning the sky orange. Maria returned late, leaving her bag at the door. Her eyes sparkled not from fatigue, but from something else. She sat down at the table, silently took the plate, but did not look at him. How's work? He asked, pouring her water. Fine, she answered, as briefly as a shot. People are interesting. Interesting, he repeated, nodding. Fine. She went to bed, and he remained at the table, looking at Serena's empty plate. Buck nuzzled his hand, and Kaz ruffled his ears. The leaves rustled outside the window. The wind blew them across the yard, and Kaz smiled, listening to the sound. Caspian Reynolds stood at the sink, washing the remains of his morning oatmeal off his plate. The October wind knocked on the window, blowing yellow leaves across the yard, where Buck lazily gnawed on an old bone. It was Friday morning, 2 months since Maria had left to work as a secretary, and the house seemed quieter than usual. He dried his hands with a towel, feeling a slight tingling in his fingers, the first signal that his blood sugar was starting to go crazy. Type 2 diabetes struck him about 5 years ago, after 40 years in construction and too many late nights of beer and steak. He lived with it like he would with a grumpy neighbor. He checked the level with a glucometer, swallowed metformin, and tried not to forget about his diet. And after the accident, they added blood thinners, warfarin, little white pills that kept his heart in rhythm while his leg healed. He shuffled to the table where an orange bottle of medicine lay, empty. He swallowed the last pill yesterday, and now he had to pick up a new batch from the pharmacy. Kaz rubbed his temples, feeling tiredness rolling in not from work. He had been sitting at home on disability pension for a year, but from this routine. He picked up the phone and dialed Maria. She was supposed to be in the office 10 minutes from their pharmacy on the corner of Main and Fifth. "Mira, hello," he said when she answered after the third ring. His voice was low but warm, as always when he spoke to her. "Cause?" Her voice was sharp, slightly irritated, with a background noise, the clinking of cups, someone's voices. "I'm on a break." "What's happened?" "Nothing happened," he coughed, sitting down on a chair. "It's just an empty jar. Can you stop by the pharmacy after work? My pills are ready, warfarin and metformin." "Pharmacy?" She sighed loudly, as if he had asked her to dig a hole. "'Cause I have a lot to do today. I was going to Riverside with the girls after office." "With girls?" He frowned, but tried not to show it in his voice. "Okay, Mira. I just can't live without them. My leg is aching. My blood sugar is jumping. I don't want to burden you, but—" "Jesus, Cause," she interrupted, her tone sharp as a knife. "You are not helpless. Take a taxi or something. I'm not your nurse." "Taxi?" He laughed, briefly, but without offense. "I thought you were my wife, not a taxi driver." "Okay, I'll figure it out." "You'll figure it out," she answered, softer, but with a hint of impatience. "I'll be late. Don't wait." She hung up and Cause put the phone on the table, looking at it like he was an old friend who had suddenly turned away. He wasn't angry. Maria had always been like that, hot-tempered like a firework. He liked that about her, even after 22 years of marriage. She was younger, she was only 44, and he was already 56, and he felt the difference in his bones. But he loved her, her sharp tongue, her laugh, her way of living as if there was no tomorrow. And he did everything so that she could afford it. He stood up, limping towards the closet for his cane. Buck ran up, nuzzling his wet nose into his hand, and Cause ruffled his ears. "You and I will have to take a walk, old man," he said to the dog, smiling. "Siren will arrive tomorrow. We need to be in shape." Siren. His little girl, now 22, is a design student living 2 hours away in her college apartment. She promised to come over the weekend, and Cause was already anticipating her laughter. Cause called a taxi, drove to the pharmacy, and picked up his jars. The pharmacist, elderly Mrs. Clare, looked at him over her glasses. "How are you, Cause?" she asked, holding out the package. "Is your leg still bothering you?" "It worries me," he nodded, smiling. "But I'm tough, Mrs. Clare. I won't give up." "You've always been like this," she chuckled. "Say hi to Maria. She's a secretary now, right?" "Yes," he answered, hiding the shadow in his voice. "She likes it. Communication, diversity." He returned home and swallowed the tablets with water, feeling the tingling in his fingers subside. The day passed quietly. He tinkered with the lawnmower, watched the news, fed Buck. Maria didn't return for dinner as promised, and he left her plate in the refrigerator before going to bed alone. The house hummed with its silence, but he got used to it. Saturday morning greeted him with the ringing of the doorbell. Cause came downstairs, limping without a cane, his leg ached less after the medicine. Serena stood in the doorway, a backpack slung over her shoulder, her hair pulled back into a messy ponytail. She smiled, throwing her arms around his neck. "Dad," she shouted, hugging him so tightly that he almost suffocated. "I miss you." "Me too, baby," he laughed, hugging her back. "How's the road?" "Okay." She kicked off her sneakers, entering the kitchen. "But I'm hungry. Do you have meatloaf?" "It will be," he winked, heading towards the stove. "Anything for my princess." She plopped down on a chair, watching him take the meat out of the refrigerator. Buck ran in, tail wagging, and Siren patted him, laughing. "Where is Mom?" she asked, looking around. "She usually grumbles here that you're too noisy." "At work, probably," Cause shrugged, heating up the frying pan. "Or with friends. She is rarely at home now." "Rarely?" Siren frowned, but not warily, but with slight surprise. "Has she become Secretary of the Year?" "Maybe," he chuckled, chopping an onion. "She likes it there." He says communication, diversity. "Variety," she repeated, shaking her head. "Okay." The main thing is that you are here, Dad. Without you, I would have died of hunger. From hunger? He laughed, throwing the onion into the frying pan. You are a designer, not a tramp. Or is everything that bad in your college? Bad, she winked. Pasta with ketchup is my limit. Save me, cause the great. They chatted while he cooked about her projects, about Buck, about how he once almost burned down the kitchen trying to make pizza. Siren was his light at 22. She still had the same spark she had at 6, only now she was drawing logos instead of unicorns. He looked at her, feeling his heart warm, even if his leg ached and his sugar demanded a new check. Maria showed up for lunch, leaving her bag at the door. Her dress was new dark green, low cut, and she smelled not of home, but of something sharp, floral. She walked into the kitchen, nodding to Serena. Hey, baby, she said, sitting down. When did you arrive? In the morning, Serena took a bite of a piece of roll, looking at her mother. Where have you been? It's like you're being carried by the wind. In the office, Maria shrugged, picking up her fork. Business meetings. Work, you know. On Saturday, Siren narrowed her eyes, but with a smile. You're quite a careerist, Mom. Yeah, Maria snorted, but her gaze was somewhere far away. We need to do something. Kaz looked at her as he cut himself a piece. She was beautiful at 44, she looked 35, and he was proud of it. But something was wrong in her, not fatigue, not irritation, but some kind of alien energy. He shrugged it off, blaming it on his medications. His head sometimes became dizzy if he forgot to eat. Mira, how are your girls doing? He asked, pouring her water. Was it fun yesterday? It's fun, she nodded briefly. An ordinary bar. Nothing special. Nothing special, Serena chuckled, looking at her father. Dad, Mom seems to be having a midlife crisis. We'll buy a motorcycle soon. Crisis? Kaz laughed, winking at Maria. Then I'll drive. My leg is still straining. Very funny, Maria rolled her eyes, but the corners of her lips twitched. Eat, comedians. I still need a shower. She left, leaving her and Serena at the table. The girl leaned towards him and whispered, She's somehow different, Dad. Did you notice? Maybe, he shrugged, smiling. Job. She needs time. Time, Siren nodded, but her gaze was thoughtful. Okay, the main thing is that you are here, my chef. They finished their meal, laughing at old stories. The day went on as usual. Buck was kicking a ball in the yard. Maria got out of the shower, changed clothes, and left again on business, as she said. In the evening, he and Serena were sitting in the living room, watching some old movie about cowboys. She pressed herself against his shoulder, as in childhood, and Kaz felt that she was still there. His girl, his house, his life. Maria will be back as always. It was getting dark outside the window. The lantern was blinking, casting long shadows on the lawn. Siren yawned and muttered, Good night, Dad. Don't sit for long. Calm down, baby, he patted her head, watching her go upstairs. He got up, turned off the TV, and went to the door to check the lock. Everything was quiet, only Buck whined in his sleep. Kaz smiled as he walked back to the couch. Caspian Reynolds was working on his lawnmower in the backyard when he heard a car approaching. Sunday was approaching evening, the sun was setting behind the trees, turning the sky crimson, and Buck was lazily lying in the grass, exposing his belly to the last warm rays. Cuz wiped the sweat from his forehead with his sleeve, feeling his leg ache after an hour of work. He glanced at the glucometer lying on the porch. His sugar was normal, 120, after lunch with Serena. She left an hour ago, back to college, hugging him goodbye so tightly that he almost shed tears. Dad, don't overwork yourself, she said, getting into her Ford, and watch your mom. She's kind of strange. Strange? He laughed, patting her on the head. This is her crisis. Baby, let's hope it passes soon. Siren chuckled, but a shadow flashed in her eyes, not anxiety, but simply thoughtfulness. She drove away, leaving him with Buck and an empty house. Maria returned late, muttering something about the office, and spent the entire day in the bedroom, scrolling through her phone. The noise of the car became louder, and Kaz looked around the corner of the house. A black Dodge parked at the porch, the door slammed, and a guy got out tall, about 30, with short dark hair and light stubble. He was wearing a leather jacket, jeans and boots that looked more expensive than necessary for a Sunday evening. He held a folder of papers in his hands, casually waving it as if it were a pass into their lives. Kaz frowned, wiping his hands on his pants, and walked towards the house, limping a little more than in the morning. The door opened and Maria came out onto the porch, no longer in a dressing gown, but in that new green dress that he had noticed yesterday. Her hair was pulled back into a high ponytail, and her lips were lightly painted. She looked like she was waiting for someone. Kaz slowed down, feeling something as hard as a nail move in his chest. "Declan," she shouted, her voice unexpectedly warm, almost playful. "You're on time. Come in." The guy Declan, as she called him, smiled, briefly but confidently, and walked up the steps. Kaz stood at the porch, watching as Maria led him inside. Buck ran up, sniffed the guest's legs and barked, but without malice, just curiosity. "Kaz," Maria noticed him, waving her hand. "Come here. This is Declan from work. I brought the documents." "Documents," Kaz repeated, climbing onto the porch. His voice was low, with a slight hoarseness, but without affability. He held out his hand, wiping it on his pants once more so as not to leave any oil behind. "Caspian." "Declan Sullivan," the guy shook his hand firmly, but with some kind of slippery confidence. His eyes dark, with a mocking gleam, ran over Kaz, from the apron to the cane leaning against the railing. "Nice to meet you." Maria talked a lot. "A lot?" Kaz raised an eyebrow, looking at his wife. "I wonder what exactly." "Oh, nothing like that." Maria laughed, lightly, as if it was a joke. "It's just that you're a jack of all trades." "Come in, Declan. Let's have some tea. Kaz, are you with us?" "Tea?" Kaz chuckled, but nodded. "Okay, I'll just drive Buck." He whistled for the dog, who ran into the house, and Kaz followed them. There was a smell of coffee inside. Maria had already put the kettle on when Declan threw the folder on the table and sat down, legs stretched out, as if this was his home. Kaz sat down on the chair opposite, throwing his cane next to him. He didn't like something about this guy, not his appearance, not his manners, but something deeper, like the smell of rain before a thunderstorm. "So are you home from work?" Kaz asked, looking at Declan over the mug Maria had placed in front of him. The tea was black, bitter, just the way he liked it, but he barely noticed the taste. "Yeah," Declan nodded, sipping his. "Sales manager. Maria is my savior in the office. Without her, I would have drowned in papers." "Savior," Kaz chuckled, glancing at his wife. She stood at the stove, stirring something in the kettle, and smiled too widely. She was always good and fine. "Oh, yeah," Declan grinned, leaning back in his chair. "Organizes us all, even the boss." "Do you have to deliver the documents on Sunday?" "Yes," Declan shrugged, casually waving his hand. "The project is on fire. Maria said she wouldn't mind if I stopped by." "I don't mind," Kaz nodded, looking at the folder. It was thin, with a couple of sheets, and looked like it could wait until Monday. He turned his gaze to Maria. "You didn't say there was a fire there." "Because it's not a fire," she snorted, sitting down next to Declan. "Just a little thing." Declan was nearby, so he stopped by. "Don't start, Kaz." "Start?" He raised an eyebrow, but remained silent, sipping his tea. Declan looked at him, grinning like a cat who knows the mouse is in a trap. Kaz didn't like that look, too confident, too arrogant for a guy who was just dragging. They chatted for another 10 minutes about the weather, about how Buck once ate Siren's sock, about some nonsense with the office printer. Declan spoke loudly, with a slight boast, and Maria laughed more often than necessary. Kaz was silent, listening, but something dark was growing inside, like a shadow in the corner. When Declan stood up, slamming the folder on the table, and said it was time to go, Kaz walked him to the door without getting up. "It was nice to meet you, Caspian," Declan nodded, putting on his jacket. "See you again, probably." "Maybe," Kaz answered, his voice even but cold. "Come on." The car drove away and Maria closed the door, returning to the kitchen. Kaz sat staring into his empty mug while she put the teapot away. "Well?" she asked without turning around. "How do you like Declan?" "I don't know," Kaz shrugged, but his tone was heavy. "I don't like him, Mira." "Don't like it?" She turned around, crossed her arms, and laughed loudly, almost theatrically. "Seriously, Kaz? How?" "Everyone," he stood up, leaning on the table. "Too smooth. And that grin, it's like he's the boss here." "Master." Maria rolled her eyes, taking a step towards him. "God, Kaz, it seems to you. He's just a guy from work. I brought papers and drank tea. What are you making up?" "Am I making it up?" He frowned, looking into her eyes. "I'm not blind, Maria." He acted like it was his kitchen. "And you're too fun with him." "Cheerful?" She laughed again, but now there was a hint of mockery in her voice. "Oh, Kaz, you look just like a 15-year-old teenager. Are you jealous or what? To a colleague? This is funny." "Funny?" He stepped towards her, limping but firmly. "I'm not jealous, Mira. I see. I don't like him, that's all." "Do you see?" She crossed her arms, narrowing her eyes. "You see something that is not there. He's a normal guy, Kaz. Young, yes, but that's not a crime. Stop creating drama." "Dramas?" He pursed his lips, feeling the nail in his chest become red hot. "Okay, Mira, maybe it seems to me, but I'm not a fool." "Nobody says you're a fool," she snorted, turning away. "Just relax. This is work." She went into the living room, turning on the TV some series about lawyers that she loved. Kaz remained in the kitchen, staring at the empty mugs. Buck nuzzled his hand and he patted the dog, but the smile did not come. Something was wrong, but she's right, he's not a teenager. Outside the window, the lantern was blinking. Kaz thought about Serena, her words about strange mom were spinning in his head. He shook his head, pushing away the thoughts. Serena Reynolds pulled into her parents' driveway, her Ford tires squealing on the gravel as she parked next to Caspian's pickup. Thanksgiving hung in the air, the November chill was creeping under my jacket, and the smell of roasting turkey was already seeping from the windows, mixing with the smoke from the neighbors' fires. She turned off the engine, throwing her backpack over her shoulder, and smiled, looking forward to the weekend with her father. She was 22, but these holidays were still her anchor. Caspian's meatloaf, his jokes, their old traditions. She walked up the steps, knocked on the door, and entered without waiting for an answer. It was warm inside and smelled of spices and something sweet, pumpkin pie, probably. Buck flew into the hallway, wagging his tail, and poked his wet nose into her palm. "Hello, old man," Siren laughed, stroking him. "Where is Dad?" "Here, baby," Caspian's voice came from the kitchen, low, but somehow muffled. She walked inside, kicking off her sneakers, and froze. He stood at the stove, stirring the sauce in the pan, but his movements were slow, almost mechanical. His face, usually lively, lined with laughter, was strangely smooth, neutral, like a mask. He turned to her and smiled, but his eyes remained empty. "Siren," he said, wiping his hands on his apron. "You're on time. The turkey is almost ready." "Dad," she stepped towards him, hugging him. He hugged back, but the hug was weak, as if he was saving his strength. "Are you okay? You look quiet." "Quiet?" He chuckled, but without the usual light. "It's just such a day. Nice to see you." She frowned as she walked back to the table. Something was wrong. Caspian was always loud at holidays, he joked, told stories about the construction site, poured gravy on her, even if she grumbled that that's enough. And now he was calm, too calm. She glanced at the bottles of medicine on the windowsill, warfarin and metformin, as always. Maybe sugar? Or a leg? "Where is Mom?" she asked, sitting down and taking an apple from the bowl. Buck lay down at her feet, whining. In the living room, Kaz nodded towards the door. "Prepare the table. We will have a guest." "Guest?" Siren narrowed her eyes. "Who?" "Declan," he replied, stirring the sauce. The voice was smooth, without emotion. "That guy from her work." Maria called. "Declan." She almost choked on her apple. This one. With a grin? For what? He's the only one, Kaz shrugged, not looking at her. She felt sorry. It's a holiday. Siren pursed her lips, feeling irritation stir within her. Declan. She saw him once when she visited a couple of weeks ago, impudent, too smooth. She didn't like him right away, but Kaz then only chuckled, saying that the guy is just like a guy. And now he's at their party. Since when did he become a member of their family? She was about to protest, but Maria walked into the kitchen carrying a stack of plates. Siren, she shouted, placing them on the table. Her green dress had changed to a high-necked red one, and she looked younger than 44 too young. When did you arrive? Just now, Siren nodded, looking at her mother. Dad says we have a guest. Declan? Yeah, Maria smiled, wider than necessary. He's a lonely, poor fellow. No family, few friends. I thought, let him sit with us. Good deed. Good deed, Siren repeated, narrowing her eyes. Couldn't he sit at the bar? This is our holiday. Our? Maria snorted, crossing her arms. It's Thanksgiving, Siren, not your birthday. Be more humane. He's a good guy. Good, Serena chuckled, but remained silent, looking at her father. He was silent, stirring the sauce, as if he had not heard her. She wanted to ask what he thought, but the doorbell interrupted her. It's him, Maria perked up, almost jumping. Kaz, turn off the stove. I'll open it. She left, and Kaz turned the gas handle, placing the pan on the counter. His movements were smooth but lifeless, like a robot's. Siren stood up, walking towards him. Dad, she said quietly, touching his shoulder, are you sure you're okay? You are some kind of... Not you. Not me. He looked at her, his eyes were dull, but he smiled. It's okay, baby. Just tired, probably. My leg aches and I want to sleep. Leg? She squeezed his hand. Or sugar. Have you checked? I checked. He nodded. 110. Norm, don't worry. She didn't believe it. Normal or not, he was not like that. But Maria was already back, leading Declan with her. Hello, Caspian, he said, putting the bottle on the table. Siren, huh? Glad to see you again. Yeah, she nodded coldly. Hello. Declan brought wine. Maria took the bottle, smiling. Kaz, pour it for us. Serena, help with the plates. Siren rolled her eyes, but stood up, taking the shot glass. The holiday has begun. Turkey on the table, gravy, potatoes, pumpkin pie. Kaz sat at the head, as always, but was silent, only adding gravy when asked. He behaved like a little obedient child. Maria was chatting with Declan about the office, about some client, about the weather. Declan jokes, loudly, with that brazen confidence that infuriated Serena. She ate, listening, but her gaze kept returning to her father. He was too quiet, too neutral, as if he had turned himself off. Kaz, how's the turkey? Maria asked, pouring herself some wine. You are a meat master. Good, he replied, cutting off a piece. Juicy. Juicy, Declan chuckled, looking at him. You're quite the boss, Caspian. Maria praises your hands. Hands? Kaz looked up, but without a spark. Built with them. I'm cooking now. Both are talents. Declan winked at Maria, and she laughed, too loudly. Siren clutched her fork, feeling her irritation growing. This guy acted like a master, and his mother played along. But Kaz, he just ate, looking at his plate. The holiday dragged on. They finished the turkey and moved on to the pie. Declan was telling some story about the office coffee pot, Maria was giggling, and Serena was silently putting away the dishes. Kaz stood up to help, but she stopped him. Sit, Dad, she said quietly. I myself. Thank you, baby, he nodded, sitting back down. His voice was as smooth as water in a pond, and that frightened her most of all. When Declan left late, with another smirk and a thank you for the evening, Serena waited until Maria went into the bedroom. She found Caspian in the living room, watching TV and old Western, without sound. Dad, she sat down next to him, turning off the screen. What's wrong with you? With me? He turned around, his eyes tired but empty. Nothing, Serena. It's just a long day. Long. She squeezed his hand. Her voice became firmer. You're not like that, Dad. You're switched off. It's not you. Turned off? He chuckled, but without laughing. Maybe age. 56 is no joke. Not age, she shook her head. You were always alive, even after the accident. Something's wrong. I'll take you to the hospital after the weekend. To the hospital? He frowned, but didn't object. For what? I'm fine. No, she squeezed his hand harder. You're not okay. I see. Sugar, medications, anything you need to check it. Medicines, he nodded slowly. I drink everything as I should. My mother watches over it. Then something else. She stood up, looking down at him. I won't leave it like this, Dad. Tomorrow we rest and go on Monday. And no, I'm fine. He looked at her for a long time, and something flashed in his eyes, not a spark, but the shadow of old Caspian, the one who built bridges and repaired her bicycle. Okay, baby, he said quietly, if it makes you feel better. I don't feel any better, she crossed her arms. I'm scared. You are my dad, and I know you. He nodded, looking away. Serena went into the kitchen to clean up the remains of the pie, but her hands were shaking. She looked at the bottles of medicine orange familiar, but something in them pricked her. She didn't know what, but she felt it. She returned to the living room, but Kaz had already gone to bed, leaving Buck on the couch. Siren Reynolds stood in the hallway, lacing up her sneakers with such force that the laces almost broke. The morning after Thanksgiving was gray, the sky outside was overcast, and the wind blew leaves across the yard like a flock of frightened birds. Her phone vibrated in her pocket, an urgent call from her college advisor, demanding her return due to a missed deadline on a project. She cursed to herself, clutching her backpack, but inside everything was boiling not from studying, but from what she saw yesterday. Caspian, her dad, her anchor was not himself, and it gnawed at her like a rusty nail. Dad, she shouted, glancing into the living room. He sat on the couch, Buck at his feet, and looked at the TV, where they were playing a tire commercial. His face was pale, his eyes empty, just like yesterday at the table. I'll be back soon, okay? Of course, baby, he answered, his voice weak but even. Go and study. I'm fine. In order? She stepped towards him, throwing her backpack on the floor. You're not okay, Dad. I see it. He smiled crookedly, without a spark, and waved his hand. My leg is aching, my blood sugar is jumping, he said. Nothing new. Don't worry. Jumping, she clenched her fists, feeling her throat tighten. You could barely move yesterday. I wanted to go to the hospital on Monday. The bedroom door slammed and Maria came out, already in a robe, with disheveled hair and a cup of coffee in her hands. Her 44 years seemed far away. She looked fresh, almost defiant, as if the holiday had charged her with energy that Caspian did not have left. What's that noise? She asked, narrowing her eyes. Serena, are you leaving? Yes, Siren turned to her, her voice becoming sharp. I was called. The project is on fire. But Dad, he feels bad, Mom. Did you see him yesterday? I saw it, Maria shrugged, taking a sip of coffee. He's tired. It's a holiday, you know. Everyone is tired. Tired? Siren stepped towards her, her eyes sparkling. He's not tired. He's switched off. This is not normal, Mom. He needs to go to the hospital. To the hospital. Maria snorted, putting her cup down on the table. Oh my God, Siren, you're being dramatic. He's just old. 56 is no joke. Old? Siren raised her voice without holding back. He's not old, he's sick. Did you even look at him? He can barely speak. Barely speaks. Maria crossed her arms, her tone becoming cold. He ate normally yesterday and sat normally. You're exaggerating, as always. Am I exaggerating? Siren clenched her fists so that her nails dug into her palms. Are you ever at home? Or again with the girls? With this Declan? Siren. Maria slammed her palm on the table, coffee splashed. Don't you dare. This is my work, my life. I'm not his maid to sit here and whine. I'm not asking you to whine. Siren stepped closer, her voice trembling with anger. I ask you to take Dad to the hospital. I need to leave, but he can't do it alone. He can handle it." Maria straightened up, looking down. "He's a grown man, Serena. Stop babying him." "Babysitting?" Siren gasped, feeling tears burning her eyes. "This is my dad, Mom, your husband. Do you even see what's wrong with him?" "I see," Maria pursed her lips, but her gaze was firm. "And I'll figure it out. Go and learn. Don't make a tragedy out of this. Will you figure it out?" Siren looked at her for a long time, then turned to Caspian. He looked at them, but was silent. Only Buck whined at his feet. "Dad, I'll be back in a couple of days. Please hold on." "I'm holding on, baby," he nodded, smiling weakly. "Go." She walked over and hugged him, feeling his hands tremble. Then she turned to Maria. "Promise," she said quietly but firmly. "Promise me you'll take him to the hospital. Tomorrow." "I promise," Maria sighed, looking away. "I'll take it tomorrow. Calm down." Siren nodded, but there was a lump in her chest. She grabbed her backpack, took one last look at her father, and walked out, slamming the door. The car started up with a growl, and she drove off without looking back. Her heart was beating like a hammer, but she drove forward. Her studies were not waiting, and Maria promised. The day passed for Caspian in a fog. He sat on the couch, looking at the TV, but couldn't see the screen. "My leg ached, my head was spinning, and something inside was pressing like a stone." He swallowed his pills as always. Maria had gone on errands after dinner, leaving him with Buck and an empty house. He didn't ask where. He was used to it. She will be back, as always. By evening, the sky darkened, the wind howled, knocking on the windows. Cause dozed off on the couch, but woke up with a sharp nausea burning like acid. He stood up, limping toward the kitchen, feeling his stomach turn. He vomited into the sink sharply, painfully, and he slumped to the floor, breathing heavily. My hands were shaking, my legs were like cotton wool. He squeezed the bottle of warfarin lying on the table, but it was empty. He had taken the last one in the morning. "Mariah," he croaked, standing up. He needed water. He needed her. "Where is she?" He heard footsteps at the front door light, quick, and voices. Maria laughed quietly, but with that note that he had not heard for years. Another voice, low, familiar. Cause froze, feeling the nausea return, but now it was different, cold, clammy. He quietly went down the stairs, holding onto the railing, each step causing pain in his leg. The living room was dark, but light came from the bedroom, not their bedroom, but what Maria called the guest room. The door was ajar, and he heard her voice, low, almost a whisper. "He's sleeping," she said. "I gave him medicine. Everything is as always." "As always," Declan replied with a grin. "You are the best, Mira." Cause pushed the door open, slowly, silently. The light of the lamp fell on the bed, and he saw her, Maria, in a silk peignoir, sitting on Declan's lap. His jacket was on the floor, his shirt was unbuttoned, and her hands were on his shoulders. They laughed. "He doesn't even move," she said, leaning closer. "Sleeps like the dead." "It would be better if it were like that," Declan chuckled, his hand sliding along her back. Cause froze, feeling the world fall apart. The nausea hit again, stronger, and he grabbed the joint to keep from falling. His legs gave way, his head swam, and he clenched his fist as he looked at them. They didn't see him. They were too busy with themselves, their laughter and kisses. He wanted to scream, but his throat was squeezing like a vice. His heart was beating unevenly, too fast, and he realized it was not just nausea. This was worse. He retreated, quietly, stumbling, and slid down the wall in the corridor. His breathing was ragged, sweat was pouring into his eyes, and a voice whispered in his head, not his, not theirs, "You see, Cause, you know." He clenched his teeth, feeling the darkness creeping towards the edges of his vision. He felt bad, worse than ever. He lost consciousness. Dr. Everett Crowe stood at the window of his office at the county clinic, watching the morning fog drift across the parking lot, clinging to the bare branches of the trees. His threadbare cloak hung on a hook by the door, and on the table lay a folder with the name Caspian Reynolds, thin but heavy, like the weight of someone else's life. He cleared his throat and glanced at the clock 9:15 m Tuesday, 2 days after Siren Reynolds had burst into his life with her desperate call. Caspian lay in room 214, strapped down, pale, bleary-eyed, and his daughter was now rushing here from college, leaving everything for her father. Curo rubbed the scars on his forearms, old marks of war that ached before trouble, and prepared to talk. The door opened and Maria Reynolds walked in, her heels clicking on the linoleum like gunfire. She was wearing a dark blue coat, her hair was tied up in a neat bun, but her face too pale, with light shadows under her eyes, betrayed a sleepless night. Her 44 years were hidden behind makeup, but Quiroz saw right through her. He'd seen too many liars in the military to buy her facade. "Dr. Crow," she said, her voice soft, with a hint of trembling that she had clearly rehearsed. "I am Maria, Caspian's wife." Serena said, "Are you examining him?" "Yeah," Curo nodded, sitting down at the table and pointing her to a chair. "Have a seat, Mrs. Reynolds. We need to talk." She sat cross-legged and folded her hands in her lap, a gesture that should have seemed calm, but her fingers trembled slightly. Crow opened the folder, skimmed the nurse's notes, seizure, paranoia, nausea, and leaned back in his chair, looking at her over his glasses. "Tell me about your husband," he said, his voice low and hoarse, like that of a man who is used to digging deeper than words. "What happened to him before they brought him?" "Oh," Maria sighed, pressing her palm to her chest. "It was terrible, Dr. Bezhe. He suddenly became strange, quiet, distant. I thought it was fatigue, the holiday, Thanksgiving. But on Sunday night, he woke up, vomited, and could barely stand. I was so scared." "Are you scared?" Curo squinted, tapping his pen on the table. "And before that, how has he been acting in recent months?" "Well," she hesitated, looking down, and her voice became quieter. "He was always stubborn, my cause. He worked in construction until he fell 3 years ago. His leg broke, and he has been at home ever since. He has diabetes, takes metformin, and after the accident, warfarin to prevent his blood from thickening. I made sure he drank everything as he should." "Did you follow?" Curo coughed, writing something down in his notebook. "What about behavior? Complaints? Anything unusual?" "Complaints?" Maria raised her eyes, her lips twitching in a weak smile. "He grumbled, of course. He said that his leg hurt and that he felt dizzy sometimes. But he's so strong, Never showed weakness. I thought it was age. He's 56 after all." "Age," Curo repeated, looking at her firmly. "And that night, what did he say when he threw up?" "Said?" She swallowed, her fingers tightening. He was muttering something. "About me, about some shadows. I don't understand, doctor. He was not himself. I called an ambulance because he collapsed in the corridor. I was so worried." "We were worried," Curo nodded, but a shadow of sarcasm flashed in his voice. "Good wife. What about medications? Did you give them to him yourself?" "Yes," she nodded, quickly, too quickly. "I always checked. Everything according to the recipe. I wanted him to be healthy, doctor. He's my cause." "Your cause?" Curo chuckled, closing the folder. "Okay, Mrs. Reynolds. We took blood tests, urine tests, everything we needed. We'll soon find out what's wrong with him. Diabetes, blood pressure, maybe something else. The results will show." "Will they show you?" Maria froze, her eyes widened for a moment, but she immediately smiled. "Fine. I hope you can figure it out. I want him to come home healthy." "We'll figure it out." Curo stood up, looking down at her. "Siren insisted. She called me yesterday and said it was off. Stubborn girl." "Oh, yes," Maria laughed, briefly, nervously. "She is like that. Everything is dramatic, but I'm glad she cares." Curo nodded, opening the door. "Go ahead, Mrs. Reynolds. I'll call you when there's news." She stood up, straightened her coat, and walked out, her heels clicking down the hallway again. Curo watched her leave, feeling the scars on his arms itch. She lied not all of it, but enough. He saw it in her eyes, in the trembling of her hands. Something was unclean, and the tests would find it. He closed the door, sat back down, and opened the folder, muttering to himself. Let's see what you're hiding, loving wife. Maria walked out into the hallway, her steps slowing when she saw Declan Sullivan leaning against the wall by the coffee machine. He was in his leather jacket, with a cigarette behind his ear, and grinning as if the hospital was his personal stage. She walked over, her face paling even more, and grabbed him by the sleeve, dragging him to a corner where they couldn't be heard by the nurses scurrying past. Declan, she hissed, her voice shaking. They took tests. This doctor. He suspects something. Suspects? Declan chuckled, crossing his arms. Mira, relax. You're shaking like a girl before an exam. Relax? She clenched her fists, her eyes sparkling. Did you hear what I said? Analyze. They'll find everything, Deck. What did we give him? How did we? Quiet. He grabbed her by the shoulders, shaking her. Don't yell, stupid. Nobody will find anything. He won't find it. Maria broke out. Her voice became higher, almost broke. What if they find it? It's not just pills, Declan. This. This is a plant, Mira. He lowered his voice, leaning towards her. Not chemistry, not poison. I told you, the stuff I got is herbal-based. Natural. No laboratory in the world can figure out what it is unless you know what to look for. Herbs? She looked at him. Her eyes were wild. You are sure? What if they understand? If Siren? Siren? Declan laughed, quietly but evilly. Your brat won't do anything. She's at college and the old man is passed out. Tests will show sugar, blood pressure, maybe fatigue. Anything, but not this. Isn't this? Maria swallowed, her hands trembling. What if he wakes up? What if he says, he saw us, Deck. That night, I saw his eyes. Saw? Declan narrowed his eyes, but his grin didn't disappear. And what? He muttered about shadows, about delirium. Nobody will believe him. He's gone crazy, Mira. You did it yourself. Did you do it? She stepped back, pressing her hand to her mouth. I'm scared, Deck, if they find out. They won't recognize him. He stepped towards her, his voice becoming as hard as steel. Listen to me. We are careful. You gave him this mixture little by little, as I said. It clouds your mind, knocks you down, but doesn't kill you. It's not poison, Mira. This is nature. They'll think he's crazy or that diabetes is playing tricks. Everything is clean. Is it clean? She looked at him, her breathing hitched. What if not? If this doctor? Declan chuckled, leading her to the window. Old guy with scars? He won't prove anything. Calm down. We're in business, Mira. Money, house, everything is ours. Just control yourself. She nodded, slowly, but her eyes moved like those of a hunted animal. Declan patted her on the shoulder, grinning. Go home, he said. I'll come by later. We have to keep up the facade. Facade, she repeated, quietly, almost in a whisper. Okay. She left, her steps fading down the corridor. Declan remained, looking out the window where the fog thickened, hiding the cars. He pulled out a cigarette, lit it despite the no-smoking sign, and blew out the smoke, grinning. Everything went according to plan. In the office, Curo closed the folder, rubbing his neck. He stood up, went to the window, and saw her Maria getting into the car and Declan's shadow at the entrance. His scars itched more, and he muttered, Someone stinks here, and I will find something. He returned to the table, took the phone, and dialed Siren. Her voice harsh, alarmed, answered after the first ring. Dr. Crow, she said. I'm going. What's wrong with Dad? I don't know yet, girl, but you did the right thing by calling me, he replied. But your mother plays at being a loving wife. The tests will come soon. Be ready. Ready, she exhaled. I'll be there in an hour. He hung up, looking at the folder. Siren Reynolds drove her Ford down the highway, gripping the steering wheel as if it was the only thing keeping her from falling into the abyss. The fog hung over the road, thick and cold, like the breath of a ghost, and the headlights snatched out shreds of gray from it, turning them into shadows. The phone was lying on the passenger seat. The screen was still glowing after Maria's call, short, sharp, like a blow. Cause is at the district clinic, room 214. Come if you want. Serena didn't think twice. She dropped the sketch she was working on, grabbed her backpack, and ran out, leaving the apartment door wide open. Her father was in the hospital, and she knew this was not just a seizure. The engine growled, reflecting her anger, and the image of Caspian, her dad, a strong man, was spinning in her head. It couldn't have broken so quickly, not 2 days after Thanksgiving. She saw him on Sunday pale, quiet, but still with that spark that made him her anchor. And now he's tied up in the room, like Dr. Crow said? No, it's not diabetes, it's not age, it's not fatigue. It was Maria, her cold eyes, her laughter with that Declan, the idiot who sat at their table like the owner. Siren squeezed the steering wheel harder, feeling the rage burning her throat. She couldn't believe that her father, a man who survived a fall of 10 meters and stood up to raise her, would allow some insolent person to ruin his life. There is something unclean here, and she will tear out the truth, even if she has to tear this house down brick by brick. She grabbed the phone, holding the steering wheel with one hand, and dialed Abby Crow, a friend from college and the daughter of Dr. Everett Crow, a psychiatrist at the same clinic. Abby answered after the second ring, her voice sleepy but warm. "Siren," she said, yawning. "Why are you up so early?" "Abby," Siren exhaled, her voice trembling with haste. "I need your help. My dad is in the hospital district clinic, room 214. Something is wrong, and I don't know what to do." "Hospital?" Abby coughed, waking up. "Lord, what happened?" "I don't know exactly." Serena turned onto the exit. The headlights illuminated the sign, "Clinic 10 miles." "He was normal? Well, more or less on Saturday, and now. My mother called and said that he was there. He's diabetic on warfarin, but it's not just a seizure. It, it was off, Abby. I saw him, and it's not him." "Turned off?" Abby fell silent, then her voice became more serious. "Wait, do you think it's something serious?" "Yes," Siren pursed her lips, overtaking the van. "Mom is strange. And this Declan, her colleague, was at our party. I don't believe that Dad broke down on his own. He's strong, Abby. Strongest of all." "Declan." Abby chuckled. "Listen, I'll call Dad. He's at the clinic now, on duty. I'll ask him to look at your father. What else do you know?" "Nothing yet." Serena glanced at the clock, 9:30. "But I'm going there. Mom is hiding something, I feel it. I need your dad, Abby. Can he help?" "Maybe," Abby coughed again. "You know him, an old warrior, stubborn as hell. He loves such riddles. I'm calling him right now. We'll be waiting for you." "Thank you, Abby," Serena exhaled, feeling the lump in her chest loosen a little. "You are salvation." "You bet," the friend chuckled. "Hold on, Siren. We'll get your dad out." She hung up and Serena tossed the phone onto the seat. Abby was her trump card, smart, sharp-tongued, and her father, Everett Crow, was a legend at the clinic. A former military psychiatrist with scars on his arms and a gaze that pierced walls, he could unearth the truth where others saw only symptoms. Serena knew him since childhood. He came to their house a couple of times when Caspian was still working, brought beer and argued with his father about politics. If anyone could save Caspian, it would be Kuro. But she needs more. She didn't just want to get her father out, she wanted to crush those who drove him there. Mom with her fake concern, Declan with his arrogance, they won't get away from this. Her dad didn't deserve this. She remembered Roy Miller, an old friend of Caspian's, a big man with arms like sledgehammers, who had worked with him at a construction site before the accident. Roy lived in a nearby town, repaired cars in his workshop, and hated Maria from day one. "Too much noise for empty space," he said, and Cause laughed, clapping him on the shoulder. They hadn't seen each other for a couple of years. Roy was angry that Cause had sold himself to her whims, but Serena knew that he still considered her father a brother. She dialed his number, praying he would answer. "Hello?" Roy's voice was rough, like sandpaper, with a slight echo. He was in the garage, judging by the sound. "Roy, this is Siren," she breathed, holding the steering wheel with one hand. "Caspian's daughter. I need help." "Siren?" He coughed. The sound was sharp. Little Casa, what happened? Dad's in the hospital, she swallowed, feeling her throat constrict. District Clinic, room 214. Something's wrong, Roy. She brought some idiot, Declan, to the house, and I think they did something. Broke. Roy fell silent, then his voice became lower. Cause? This old bull, I don't believe it. What kind of idiot? Declan, Siren spat the name like poison. Mom's colleague. Insolent, with a grin. He was at our party and behaved like a host. Dad was quiet, not like always. And then the hospital. I don't know what they gave him, but it's not just diabetes, Roy. This is something different. Other? Roy chuckled, and she heard him throw a wrench. Your mother was always a snake, Siren. I told Cass don't trust her. But he loved her, fool. And this Declan. What did you see? Did you see it? She squeezed the steering wheel tighter, remembering. Mom laughed with him too much. Dad sat like a shadow, and then she called and said that he was at the clinic. I don't believe her, Roy. She's hiding something. Roy coughed again, his voice becoming firm. Listen, baby. I haven't seen Cass for a couple of years. I was angry with him because of your mom. But he is a brother. If it's crap, I'll deal with it. I'm an hour away. I'm leaving now. I'll be at the clinic in an hour. In 1 hour? Siren exhaled, feeling hope mixed with anger. Thank you, Roy. I'll be there. Dr. Crow there. He will help. Curo? Roy chuckled. This old bastard? Good man. Okay, Serena. Hold on. Kaz is tough. We'll get him out. We'll get it out, she repeated, her voice trembling. Thank you, Roy. Don't thank me, he muttered. Go to him. I'll be there soon. He hung up and Siren pressed down on the gas, cutting the half-hour down to 20 minutes. The fog thickened, the headlights picked out shreds of gray, but she saw only her father, his smile, his strength, his love. He couldn't break. Not like that. The clinic rose out of the fog, a white building with blinking windows, like a beacon in hell. Serena parked, leaving the car at the entrance, and ran inside, ignoring the scream of the nurse behind the counter. Caspian Reynolds, room 214. She barked without stopping. Where is he? Wait. The nurse jumped up, but Serena was already rushing down the corridor, her sneakers knocking on the linoleum. She found the room, pushed the door, and froze. Kaz was lying on the cot, straps tightening his wrists. His face was pale as chalk, and his eyes were closed. Everett Crow stood nearby, his hunched figure bent over in Roman 4, a threadbare raincoat hanging on a chair, and a nurse writing something down on a tablet. Dad! Siren rushed towards him, grabbing his hand. She was cold, trembling, but her fingers clenched weakly in response. I'm here. I'm here. Weak. She looked at the doctor. Her eyes were burning. What's wrong with him? Tests. They will be soon, Kuro coughed, rubbing the scars on his arms. I spoke to your mother. She plays caring, but I don't believe her. Something's fishy here, girl. Siren squeezed her father's hand tighter. I know. I don't believe that Dad broke down on his own. He's strong, doctor. He doesn't give up. He doesn't give up. Kuro nodded, looking at Caspian. That's why I'm here. I am practicing some things. I would like to try hypnosis in addition to tests, as soon as he gets stronger. We have to dig into his head. Hypnosis. Siren exhaled, looking at her father. Fine. I called Roy Miller, an old friend of Dad's. He's coming here. It will help, if anything. Roy, Kuro narrowed his eyes, but smiled wryly. This big guy, I remember him. Good man. The more hands, the better. Caspian stirred, his eyelids fluttered, and he opened his eyes dull, but alive. He looked at Siren and smiled faintly. Baby, he croaked, you have arrived. Of course, Dad, she squeezed his hand, tears burning her eyes. I won't leave you. We'll figure it out. He nodded, slowly, and closed his eyes again. Siren turned to Kuro, her voice becoming firm. Do whatever you want, doctor, she said. I want the truth. They won't break it. Kuro nodded, moving towards the window. Siren remained by the bed, holding Caspian's hand. Serena Reynolds stood by her father's bed, leaning against the wall as her hands shook with fatigue and anger. He lay there, but now he was breathing more evenly. The glucose drip that Dr. Crow had insisted on administering was doing its job. Crow himself, stooped and hoarse, sat on a chair nearby, holding in his hands an old pocket compass, his anchor, as he called this thing. Roy Miller, a big man with arms like sledgehammers, stood at the door, arms crossed, and looking at Caspian with grim determination. The fog outside the window was thickening, and Serena felt the air in the room becoming heavy, as if someone invisible was waiting with bated breath. "Okay, old man," Kuro coughed, bringing the compass to Caspian's face. "It's time to dig. Are you ready?" "Dig?" Kaz croaked. His voice was weak, but there was a spark in it. "In your head?" "Yeah," Kuro grinned, the scars on his forearms showing in the dim light. "If there is something there other than fog, we will find it. Siren says you're broken. Prove it." "They broke it." Kaz clenched his fist. The belts creaked. I know. Declan. Maria." "Okay," Kuro turned on the recorder. The click echoed in the room. "Look at the arrow, Kaz. She will show the way. Breathe with me. Inhale, exhale." Siren held her breath, watching the compass needle tremble, swinging to the north. Caspian's eyes narrowed, then relaxed, his breathing slowed, his chest heaved less frequently. Kuro leaned closer, his voice deep as a river. "You're going back, Kaz," he said. "To the beginning. Where are you?" "Home." Caspian's voice was quiet but clear. "Sunday." He came. "Who?" Kuro squeezed the compass without taking his eyes off. "Declan." Kaz frowned, as if through force. "With papers. Maria invited him for tea. I understood right away." "Understood?" Crow glanced at Siren, who stepped closer. "What exactly?" "That he's not the one." Kaz closed his eyes, his voice becoming lower. Smirk, eyes. He looked at her, as if he were his own. "I told her in the evening. I don't like him, Mira." She laughed. "It seems to you, Kaz, you're making it up." "Are you making it up?" Kuro leaned even closer. "What happened next?" "Night." Kaz twitched, the belts tightened. "I woke up. My head was spinning. Weakness, legs like cotton wool." I asked her, "What's wrong with me?" She gave me a glass. "Drink this, Kaz. You're tired. Medicines will help." Siren clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. Roy at the door cleared his throat as he stepped forward, but Kuro waved his hand to stop him. "Medicines?" Kuro asked, his voice becoming harsher. "Which?" "I don't know." Kaz swallowed, his face distorted. "The taste is strange." She said, "You're paranoid, Kaz. It's not what you think." I fell asleep, and in the morning, everything gets worse." "Worse?" Kuro squeezed the compass harder. "What do you remember?" Day after day, Kaz began to breathe faster. "Weakness. Dream. My head is in a fog." I asked. "Maria, what are you giving me?" "You're making this up, Kaz. You dreamed it." "I saw him. Declan. He came. They were whispering. I heard. He won't notice." "Continue." I wanted to get up, but I couldn't. "Couldn't?" Kuro narrowed his eyes, glancing at Siren. "Why?" "I have no strength." Kaz opened his eyes, but looked past, into emptiness. They looked at me like garbage." She was saying, "You're tired, Kaz. Lay down." And he was grinning. I knew. I knew that this was not a dream. The room fell silent, only the tape recorder hummed, recording. Siren pressed her hand to her mouth, tears burned her eyes, but she held back. Roy clenched his fists, his face darkening like a storm cloud. Kuro turned off the recorder, put the compass in his pocket, and leaned back in his chair, rubbing his neck. "It's not paranoia," he said, looking at Siren. "They drove him crazy. Deliberately." "Deliberately?" Siren stepped towards him, her voice trembling. "What did they give him?" "I don't know," Kuro coughed, looking at Caspian. Not chemistry, not poison, I would have seen it in the tests. But something clouds your head and knocks you off your feet. Smoothly, day after day. Tests. Roy came closer. His voice was like a roar. Have they come? They've arrived. Kuro pulled out a sheet of paper from the folder on the table and ran his eyes through it. Sugar jumps from 80 to 200 per day. The blood is thick, although warfarin should thin it. The pressure is stormy. But in the urine, in the blood, there's nothing extra. No toxins or banned substances. Purely. Is it clean? Siren clenched her fists. How clean is it? He didn't do it himself. Not myself. Kuro nodded, looking at her firmly. The last time he saw his doctor was 3 months ago. The tests were normal. Sugar is stable. Blood flows as it should. This started recently. Something that leaves no trace. Or we don't know where to look. We don't know. Siren looked at her father. Her voice became lower. So this is home. They were hiding something. Home. Kuro stood up, rubbing the scars on his arms. We have to look there. Medicines, food, whatever. They played with him, Siren. They played smart. Smart. Roy stepped towards the table, his eyes sparkling. This snake and its puppy, I'll crush them. Kuro chuckled, looking at him. But first we need to know what we're dealing with. They're not stupid, Roy. This is not drugstore poison. Roy clenched his fists, looking at Caspian. Then what? Herbs? Some kind of shamanism? Maybe, Kuro shrugged. I saw this in the army. Herbs and mixtures cloud your mind, but don't kill you. They don't get caught in tests if you don't know what to look for. We need more. More? Siren turned to him. Her voice became firm. I'll go home. I'll find what they were hiding. Kuro nodded. But be careful. They don't know what we're digging. Let it be so. And this Declan, Roy coughed, looking at them. I'll punch him. I have friends, the guys know people. Who he is, where he comes from, what kind of bastard he is, I'll find out. Punch, Kuro nodded, looking at him. But it's quiet. If he's in, he's slippery. Roy chuckled angrily. Let's see how he eludes me. Siren looked at her father. His face was calm, but pale as chalk. He opened his eyes, looking at her weakly. Siren, he croaked. What did I say? That's it, Dad. She squeezed his hand, tears bursting out. You told the truth. They wanted to break you, but we'll get them. We'll get it. Kaz laughed weakly, but with fire. I knew he was a bastard. I knew. Kuro patted him on the shoulder. And now we know too. Rest, old man. We're getting down to business. Kaz nodded, closing his eyes. Siren wiped away her tears as she looked at Kuro and Roy. I'm going home, she said, her voice becoming like steel. I'll find what they were hiding. Roy, get through Declan. Doctor, keep him here. I'll hold it, Kuro nodded, looking at her. Be smarter than them, girl. They think they have won. Let them think, Siren clenched her fists. I'll crush them. Roy nodded, slapping her on the shoulder, and walked out, his footsteps echoing down the hallway. Siren left the room, her sneakers pounding on the linoleum like a drum before a fight. She parked her Ford in front of the house, stepped out of the car, throwing her backpack over her shoulder, her sneakers crunching on the gravel as she walked to the porch. The door was ajar, and voices were coming from the kitchen, low, mocking, and another, harsh, but warm, almost playful. Siren froze, feeling her anger flare brighter. She knew these voices. Declan and Maria. She pushed the door open, entered, leaving her backpack at the threshold, and walked into the kitchen, where the smell of tea mixed with something sharp cologne, too strong for the morning. Maria was sitting at the table, wearing a high-necked red dress, her hair down, and a cup in front of her. Opposite is Declan Sullivan in his leather jacket, with damp dark hair plastered to his forehead. He held the mug, grinning like a cat that had caught a mouse, and his eyes ran over Siren as she entered. Siren, Maria looked up, her voice soft, but with a hint of irritation. When did you arrive? Just now, Siren crossed her arms, looking at them. And you, Declan? Did you bring the documents again? Yeah, he nodded, sipping his tea, his grin growing wider. Work doesn't wait, you know. Work, Siren repeated, her voice becoming cold as ice. And the shower too, apparently. What, straight from the bath to here? Siren. Maria slammed her hand on the table, the cup clinked. Don't start. Declan came by to pick up some paperwork and will give me a ride to work. His car broke down and he got caught in the rain. What are you making up? Am I making it up? Siren stepped closer, her eyes sparkled. Documents T. Shower this Declan is the hero of the day. Maybe we should also prepare breakfast for him. That's enough. Maria stood up. Her face turned pale, but her voice was sharp. You're acting like a child. He's a colleague, Serena. We have a project, and I need to go to the office. Colleague, Serena chuckled, looking at Declan. It's cozy here. Dad is in the hospital, and you are making tea. Your dad is fine. Maria pursed her lips, looking down at her. I called the clinic. He's under supervision. Don't be dramatic. In order? Siren laughed, bitterly, almost madly. Have you seen him, Mom? He is tied like an animal. And here you are with this. With this. Siren, Declan stood up, his voice lazy but with a hint of steel. Calm down. We're just drinking tea. No need for scenes. She turned to him. You're in my house, idiot. And I know that something is wrong here. Enough. Maria grabbed her bag from the table, her heels clicking on the floor. We're leaving. Do what you want, but don't you dare tell me. She walked past and Declan followed, giving Serena a smirk that made her feel sick. The door slammed, the car started, and they drove away, leaving her alone in silence. Siren stood looking at the empty mugs, feeling anger mixed with determination. She won't just find the truth, she'll burn their lies to the ground. She started in the kitchen, opening drawers, checking cupboards, turning over jars of tea and sugar. Nothing. Only the smell of Declan's cologne hung in the air like poison. She walked up to Maria's bedroom, her footsteps booming down the stairs like a drum. Chest of drawers, linen, scarves, old letters. She dug around, throwing things on the floor, until she came across a metal box under a stack of sweaters. The lock was weak, so she picked it. Inside was a jar orange, like the ones Caspian took, but without a label. She opened it and poured the contents into her palms, small white tablets, slightly smaller than warfarin, with a slight herbal smell. Siren clenched her fist, feeling her heart pounding. This was it. Not metformin, not warfarin, something else. She put the jar in her backpack. Her hands were shaking, but she knew. This was evidence. She'll find what it is, and they'll pay. The phone vibrated. Roy Miller. She answered, pressing it to her ear. Siren, his voice was rough, like sandpaper. I punched your Declan. And she clutched the phone as she sat down on the bed. Declan Sullivan, 32. Roy coughed. Sales manager, but this is a hat. Likes to live at other people's expense. Twice he was in court as a lover, messing around with married women, swindling them out of money. No crime, purely slippery bastard. Friends say he has been boasting that he has been living like a king lately. Be careful, baby. He's not a fool. Thank you, Roy. I found something. Pills. Not Dad's. Pills? Roy fell silent, then his voice became lower. Bring them to Curo. He'll figure it out. I'll bring it, she nodded, standing up. I'm going back. She hung up the phone and glanced at the bedroom's scattered things, an empty box. Let Maria know what she was digging. It won't stop her. She went downstairs, got into the car, and rushed to the clinic, clutching the backpack with the evidence. The road flashed outside the window, and Roy's words were spinning in my head. Lover. Lives like a king. It wasn't just Declan. It was Maria, her birth mother. And they broke her father. At the clinic, Serena burst into room 214, where Curo was standing by Caspian's bed, checking the Roman 4. Roy sat next to him, his big hands resting on his knees. Kaz looked better. His cheeks were a little pinker, his eyes were clearer, but he was still weak. Siren, Curo turned, his voice hoarse. What do you have? Here, she pulled out a jar, throwing it on the table. Found it at home. Not Daddy's pills. Crow took the jar, opened it, and smelled it. Strange. Herbs? Roy stood up, looking at her. What is this, poison? I don't know, Kuro pursed his lips, looking at Caspian. The tests were clear, but he was on something. I started therapy. He's better, see? Kaz nodded, smiling weakly. My head is clearer. Siren squeezed his hand, feeling tears burning her eyes. Dad, I found this. They bullied you. Kaz laughed, quietly, but with fire. I knew he was a bastard. Kuro nodded, looking at the jar. It's not poison, but something that fogs. Necessary check. I'll send it to the laboratory. Roy coughed, looking at Siren. I punched Declan. Lover lives at someone else's expense. 2 ships, but clean. Slippery like an eel. Kuro shrugged. Tablets can help. I'm keeping Cass here, flying. You and Roy look further. Roy nodded, patting her on the shoulder. We'll squeeze them, baby. Siren exhaled, looking at her father. Dad, hold on. She was sitting on the sofa in the living room, clutching a mug of cold tea when the front door slammed with such force that Buck jumped up, barking. Evening fell over the house like a heavy blanket. The sky outside the window was black. Only the lantern by the road blinked, casting ragged shadows on the walls. She had just returned from the hospital, where she left Caspian with Crow and Roy. Her heart was beating like a hammer, but she waited. She knew that Maria would return, and then the storm would begin. Heels clicked on the floor, and Maria burst into the living room, her face red with anger, her eyes sparkling like a cat about to pounce. She dropped her bag on the floor, her coat sliding off her shoulders, revealing the same red dress as in the morning, but now it looked wrinkled, like her nerves. Siren, she shouted, her voice breaking into a squeal. What are you doing, ha? Did you go through my things? Siren stood up, placing her mug on the table, her voice as cold as ice. And what? Found something interesting. Interesting. Maria stepped towards her, her hands trembling. You climbed into my chest of drawers and rummaged through everything. Who gave you the right? Right? Siren laughed bitterly, almost madly, stepping towards him. My dad is in the hospital. Mom, tied like an animal, and here you are chasing tea with Declan. I found pills, not his pills. Did that give you the right? Pills? Maria froze, her eyes widened, but she immediately pressed her lips together. You're crazy. These are my vitamins, Serena. What are you, a detective now? Serena reached into her backpack, pulled out a jar, and shook it in her mother's face. These are not vitamins, Mom. This is what you gave him. You poisoned him, right? Maria snatched the jar from her hands, her voice becoming higher, almost hysterical. You're sick, Serena. This is paranoia. You're like your father, you make up nonsense. Siren stepped closer, her eyes burning. He was normal until Declan showed up, and now he's in the hospital, and here you are whispering to him. I'm not stupid, Mom. Maria threw the jar on the table. It rolled and clinked. You are a child, Siren. You're going where you shouldn't. This is my life, my home. Siren clenched her fists. Her voice became low, dangerous. This is Daddy's house. He was building it while you were buying clothes, and you brought this idiot here and broke him. Maria laughed, harshly, almost madly. You don't know anything. He brought himself down with his whining and suspicions. I'm tired, Serena. I'm tired of both of you. Siren stepped even closer, their faces almost touching. Then get out. But I will find out what you did to Dad, and you will regret it. Maria stepped back, her eyes sparkling, but a shadow flashed in them, not anger, but fear. Do what you want, Siren. I'm leaving. She grabbed her bag and coat and flew out of the house, slamming the door so hard that the windows shook. Siren remained standing, breathing heavily, looking at the jar on the table. Buck walked over, nuzzled her hand, and she patted him, feeling her anger turn to cold determination. She knew where Maria went to Declan. Maria stormed into Declan's apartment, her heels clicking on the wooden floor as she tossed her coat onto a chair. The apartment was small. Declan stood by the window, wearing jeans and an unbuttoned shirt, looking out onto the street where the streetlight blinked like an eye. He turned as she entered, his smirk disappearing, replaced by irritation. What are you yelling at? He barked, taking a step towards her. I heard your screams through the door. Siren, Maria clenched her fists, her voice trembling. She found the pills, Deck. She was going through my things. She knows. Declan grabbed her by the shoulders, shaking her. Couldn't you throw away the evidence? Are you completely stupid, Maria? She broke away, her eyes filling with tears. I didn't think she'd fit in. Deck, I'm scared. He laughed, short, evilly, rubbing his face. Of course you're scared. You failed at everything. If she gives this to the doctor. Maria gasped, tears running down her cheeks. What should we do, Deck? They'll find out. Declan stepped towards her, his voice firm. They won't know if we're smarter. We need to remove the money. Transfer everything to my account, it's safer. At your expense? She looked at him, her hands trembling. He narrowed his eyes, looking down at her. Do you want us to get caught? Translate, Mira. If they dig, everything will be mine. I won't leave you, baby, but we must act. She swallowed, her voice becoming quieter. Are you sure? Exactly, he grinned, stroking her cheek. Mira, baby, translate, and we'll escape from here. She nodded, slowly, her eyes were wet, but she was afraid that he would leave without her, leaving her with this nightmare. She took out her phone, opened the banking application, and began the transfer all their savings, Caspian's money that he had saved for years at a construction site. Her fingers trembled, but she pressed confirm, feeling her heart falling into emptiness. Ready, she whispered, looking at him. What now? Now, Declan took her hand, his voice becoming softer. You're going home. You collect the most necessary things, clothes, documents. I'll prepare the papers here. We'll leave tomorrow. She squeezed his hand, her voice trembling. What if Siren? Siren, he chuckled, leading her to the door. She won't do anything overnight. Go, Mira. I'll call. She nodded, wiping away her tears, and left, her footsteps fading on the stairs. Declan closed the door, looking at the phone, where the transfer was displayed a round sum, his ticket out of here. He grinned, muttering under his breath. Everything is simpler than I thought. Maria returned home, her car squeaking on the porch. She entered, throwing her bag, and collapsed on the sofa, covering her face with her hands. The siren was not visible. She probably went upstairs or to her father. She took out her phone and dialed Declan, her fingers trembling. Deck, she whispered when he answered. I'm home. I'm scared. Don't be afraid, baby. His voice was smooth as butter. By the time they figure out what's what, we'll already be far away. Pack your things, go to sleep. Tomorrow it will all be over. Far, she repeated, her voice weak. You definitely won't quit me. I won't leave, he chuckled. You are my girl, Mira. Everything will be ours. She nodded, although he couldn't see, and hung up, wiping away her tears. She stood up, staggering, and walked towards the bedroom, not noticing that the door to the kitchen was slightly open. Siren stood there with the phone pressed to her ear, her eyes burning like coals. She turned on the recording in the morning, hiding the microphone by the sofa, a small one, bought with her last money. She heard everything: the argument, the translation, the escape plan. Her hands were shaking, but she smiled coldly, decisively. Far away, right? She whispered, looking at the phone. Let's see. She turned off the recording and quietly walked out onto the porch, where Buck was waiting for her, whining. She patted him, looking into the darkness. Siren Reynolds stood on the porch of the house, her breath coming out in clouds in the cold night air as she clutched her phone like a weapon. She knew that time was running out, and she would not let them escape. Her father lay in the hospital, broken by their hands, and she would crush them even if it was the last thing she did. She dialed Roy Miller's number, her fingers trembling, but her voice as steady as steel when he answered on the first ring. Roy, she said without wasting any time. This is Siren. They are running. Declan and Mom. I overheard he forced her to transfer all the money to his account. They are leaving tomorrow. Roy coughed, his voice rough as sandpaper. Where? I don't know for sure. Serena squeezed the phone tighter. But he told her to pack her things while he prepared the documents. He lives at 17 Parker Street. We have to stop them, Roy. Roy chuckled, and she heard him grab his keys. I'm going there. Now. This puppy won't leave. Roy, Siren stepped towards the car, her voice becoming lower. Call the police. I have a recording they are planning to run away with Daddy's money. This is evidence. Roy fell silent, then his voice became firmer. Okay, baby. I have a guy, Jim Kelly, at the station. I'm driving to Declan's, calling Jim on the way. I'll pass on everything. Thank you, Roy, Siren exhaled, feeling anger mixed with hope. He hung up and Serena put the phone in her pocket, looking at the house. Maria was inside. She heard her steps upstairs, the rustling of things, quiet sobs. Let him collect. Let her think she has a chance. Serena got into the car, started the engine, and rushed to the hospital, to her father and Crow. Her fight was here, but now she had allies, and the net was tightening. Roy Miller pulled out of his garage, his old pickup truck growling like a beast as he drove through the dark streets toward Parker Street. He gripped the steering wheel with his huge hands, feeling the old construction scars stretch across his knuckles. On the way, he called Jim Kelly, his police buddy who had once pulled him out of a bar fight. Jim, Roy barked when he answered. This is Miller. I need help, urgently. Roy, Jim coughed, his voice sleepy. What do you want at midnight? Declan Sullivan, 17 Parker Street. Roy turned into the intersection without slowing down. He and Maria Reynolds are running. They cleaned out the account of Caspian Reynolds, my friend. Serena, his daughter, has a recording they plan to leave tomorrow. Money, forgery of documents, everything is there. Are they running? Jim fell silent, then his voice became firmer. Seriously, Roy, is an address, a record, evidence? Yes, Roy squeezed the steering wheel. I'm going to see him. Can you send a patrol? I'm sending you, Jim coughed again. But don't interfere, Roy. Let the police sort it out. Let Serena bring the recording to us. I'll tell you, Roy nodded, although Jim didn't see. But I'll see what this bastard is doing. Look, Jim chuckled, but without hands. I'm going to the police station and picking up the guys. Roy hung up as he pulled up to Parker Street. Meanwhile, Maria Reynolds sat on the bed in her bedroom, her hands shaking as she stuffed clothes into her suitcase. The night dragged on endlessly. The clock on the nightstand showed 2:47, but she didn't sleep, she couldn't. Her eyes were red from tears, her face was drawn, and the words of the siren were spinning in her head. You poisoned him. She threw the dress into her suitcase, sobbing, and grabbed her phone, checking that Declan hadn't called. She was afraid that he would leave without her, that Serena already knew everything, that the police were knocking on the door. She stood up, staggering, and went to the chest of drawers, pulling out documents, a passport, everything that could be useful. Her fingers trembled as she put them in her bag, and a voice in her head whispered, You lost, Mira. You lost everything. Morning came with gray light filtering through the curtains. Maria sat on the sofa, a suitcase at her feet, her eyes as empty as glass. She dialed Declan over and over again, but the phone was silent, only beeps, endless, like her fear. She hung up the phone, jumped up, and ran to the car, her heels clicking on the gravel. She drove towards him, towards Parker Street, her hands gripping the steering wheel and tears streaming down her cheeks. The apartment was empty. She screamed, wildly, madly, falling to her knees, her voice echoing in the room. Declan, she screamed, hitting the floor with her fists. Where are you, you bastard? You promised, you love me. The neighbors heard screams, sobs, and knocking. An old woman from the apartment opposite called an ambulance. Her voice was trembling. She's screaming there like crazy. Help! Maria sat on the floor and sobbed. Her dress was wrinkled, her hair stuck to her face. At this time, Declan Sullivan was standing at the airport, his bag stuffed with cash. In his hands, he held a fake passport, David Kane. He grinned, looking at the board, a flight to Mexico in an hour. Maria was left behind, and he had no regrets. She was a burden, and the money was now his. He stepped towards the reception desk, but a voice behind him stopped him. Declan Sullivan. Two in uniform, with hard eyes, came up from behind. Let's pass. What? He turned around, his grin faltering. You were mistaken, I. We were not mistaken. This is not mine. Declan twitched, but the handcuffs clicked on his wrists. You have no right. We have, the cop nodded, looking at him. A call came in. We've got a recording, man. Went. They took him away, his screams quieting in the crowd. Roy Miller stood at the exit, watching the patrol car drive away, and grinned as he dialed the siren. Baby, he said when she answered. They took him. Airport, fake papers, money, some pills. Jim worked. Siren exhaled, her voice shaking with relief. Thank you, Roy. You are a hero. Not me, Roy chuckled. You. Hold on. She was standing in room 214, next to Caspian's bed, when Kiro entered, holding a test sheet. His scars showed in the lamplight, and his eyes were as sharp as a knife. Siren, he said, coughing. News. Tablets are a plant, not chemistry. Plant? She turned around, her heart pounding. What does it do? Sedative, Kiro sat up, looking at the sheet. In small doses relaxes. In large ones, it fogs consciousness, induces sleep, and breaks perception. A person becomes, like a child, obedient, comfortable. It's not poison, but it's still disgusting. Kiro nodded, looking at Caspian. Day by day, smoothly. I give him therapy, he is getting better. Cuz opened his eyes, smiling weakly. I feel it. My head is clearer. Dad, Siren squeezed his hand, tears burning her eyes. They're caught. Declan at the police station. We stopped them. Cos laughed, quietly, but with fire. You are my girl, Serena. Yours, she wiped away her tears, looking at Kuro. What now? Now, Crow stood up, rubbing his neck. The police will deal with Declan. I don't know what will happen to your mother, but most likely prison. Outside the window, the March wind blew wisps of snow across the yard, mixing them with mud, and Buck dozed at her feet, whining in his sleep. It's been 3 months since that morning at the airport when the police handcuffed Declan Sullivan, and 2.5 since Maria Reynolds broke like glass under a hammer. Siren rubbed her eyes, feeling the fatigue in her bones not from lack of sleep, but from the weight of everything she had been through. But there was a light burning in my chest, weak, but warm. Her father was alive at home, and that was the main thing. Caspian was sitting in a chair by the fireplace, his leg resting on a pillow and his hands clutching a mug of coffee. He looked better, his cheeks were pink, his eyes were clear again, with that sparkle that Serena remembered from childhood. Dr. Crow's therapy had pulled him out of the fog that Maria and Declan had been pumping into him for months. He still walked with a limp, and his sugar sometimes went crazy, but he was here with her, and every day he got a little stronger. She looked at him, feeling tears burning her eyes, but she smiled sincerely for the first time in a long time. Dad, she said, putting down her mug, you oversalted the soup yesterday again. I asked for less salt. Kaz laughed, low, hoarsely, but with fire. It's called taste, baby. You just don't understand art. She chuckled, shaking her head. It was soup, not Picasso's masterpiece. Buck refused to even smell it. Buck is a traitor, Kaz winked, looking at the dog. Give him pancakes, not my soup. They laughed, and the sound filled the house, driving away the shadows that still clung to the corners. Siren stood up, walked up to her father, and squeezed his hand, feeling the warmth of his fingers strong, despite everything. He was her anchor, always had been, and now she was his, transferring to the local university, dropping out of college 2 hours away to be close. Her design's logos, sketches now lay on the kitchen table next to his newspapers, and she worked on them in the evenings while he watched his westerns. She didn't regret it, not for a minute. Caspian deserved it, and she wouldn't leave him alone. The doorbell broke the silence, and Buck jumped up with a bark. Siren let go of her father's hand, walked to the door, and opened it, letting in Roy Miller and Everett Crow. Roy was the first to step forward, his big arms carrying a bag of beer and his face red from the wind. Kuro came in next, stooped in his shabby cloak, with the constant compass in his pocket, which he fiddled with when he thought. Well, old man, Roy patted Caspian on the shoulder, putting the beer on the table. "How's the soup maker?" Serena complained that you started poisoning her. Kaz laughed, looking at his daughter. "She just doesn't appreciate talent." "Sit down, Roy. And you, Crow, is the beer cold?" "Like ice." Roy plopped down on the sofa, opening the bottle. "Jim Kelly said hi. He says your Declan is now a star in the cell." Kuro cleared his throat as he sat down opposite Caspian. "More like a clown. The trial took place a week ago. 10 years for fraud, forgery, and trafficking in substances. Those tablets are a plant, yes, but prohibited. Some kind of southern root imported through the black market. 10 years, Kaz nodded, sipping his coffee. Phew, but it will do. Siren sat down next to her. Her voice was firm. The money was returned, everything down to the cent. The police shook him out of a bill in Mexico. Your savings, Dad, are there again. Kaz chuckled, looking at her. Ours, baby. You saved them. Not me, she shook her head, looking at Roy and Kuro. We, together. Roy raised the bottle, clinking it against the air. For Cass. And for you, Serena. You're like a bulldog. You grabbed onto it and didn't let go. She laughed, but her chest felt warm. Thank you all. Kuro rubbed the scars on his arms as he looked at Caspian. You're a strong old man. That root is a rare, nasty thing. Kaz clenched his fist, his eyes flashing. I knew they were bastards. Knew from day one how this puppy crossed the threshold. Kuro nodded, looking at him. And he held on. Now you are at home, and they are where they belong. Siren pursed her lips, looking out the window. Mom. The room fell silent, only the wind knocked on the windows. Maria Reynolds was the shadow that still hung over them, but now different, broken, empty. After that morning, when she screamed in Declan's apartment, the neighbors called an ambulance, and she was taken away not to a regular hospital, but to a psychiatric clinic on the other side of the state. A nervous breakdown, the doctors said. She sobbed, hit the walls, called for Declan, until her mind collapsed under the weight of guilt, fear, and betrayal. Siren saw her once through the glass in the room where Maria sat, looking into emptiness. Her hair was disheveled, and her eyes were dull, like a doll's. She didn't recognize her daughter and didn't say a word. Doctors said it might be temporary. Maria was gone not in body, but in soul, and what was left was just a shell of the woman Caspian had once loved. She brought herself down. Kaz broke the silence. His voice was quiet but firm. I gave her everything, Serena. Everything I could. But she chose him. Siren swallowed, feeling her throat tighten. I hate her, Dad, for what she did to you. But I feel sorry for her. Roy chuckled, taking a sip of his beer. She's a snake, baby. She poisoned him and sold him for this idiot. Don't be sorry. Not a snake. Kaz shook his head, looking into the fire. She was my Mira. Once upon a time, but I got lost. I don't hate her, Roy. I just let it go. Kuro coughed, looking at him. That's power, Kaz. More than they had. Serena looked at her father, feeling tears break out, but she held back. He was right, he let go, and that made him stronger than Maria or Declan could ever dream of. She stood up, walked up to him, and hugged him, pressing her to his shoulder as in childhood. You are my hero, Dad, she whispered. Always was. And you're mine, baby. He squeezed her hand, his voice trembling. You pulled me out. Roy coughed, turning away to hide the gleam in his eyes, and Kuro smiled wryly, but warmly. They sat for another hour, chatting about trifles. The beer ran out, and the guests stood up, preparing to leave. I'll come by tomorrow. Roy patted Caspian on the shoulder. I'll bring the fish. Will you fry it like in the old days? Burn it, Kaz nodded, grinning. But I'll add salt as needed. And I'm on Friday. Kuro rubbed his neck, looking at Siren. I'll look after him. And behind you, girl, don't overwork yourself with your studies. I won't overwork myself, she smiled, walking them to the door. Thank you. You are family. Roy chuckled as he stepped onto the porch. This is true. They left, their steps fading into the night, and Serena returned to her father, sitting down next to him. He looked into the fire, his face calm but alive, just like before. She took his hand, feeling the warmth return to the house, not from the fireplace, but from themselves. "Dad," she said quietly, "we did it, right?" "We did it, baby." He turned to her, his eyes sparkling. "You gave me a chance. I live for you now. And I am for you." She squeezed his hand, smiling through her tears. "We are together." Outside the window, the wind died down. The lantern by the road blinked for the last time and went out, leaving the yard in darkness. But it was light inside, not bright, but enough. Serena looked at her father, feeling the shadows recede, and for the first time in months, she believed that everything would be fine. They lost a lot, Maria, trust, years of lies, but they did not lose each other. And that was the most important thing. The next day, Serena went to the university, finalized the transfer, her projects were accepted, the teachers nodded, and she returned home with a light heart. Caspian was waiting for her with meatloaf not too salty, as he had promised, and they ate, laughing as Buck begged for a piece. Roy showed up with the fish, just like he said, and they fried it in the backyard until Crow showed up on Friday with a bottle of whiskey and old stories from the army. Declan Sullivan sat in his cell, staring at the gray walls, his grin long gone. The money he stole was returned to Caspian, and his medicines became the evidence that hammered the nails into his case. Karma is such a thing, and there always comes a time when you have to pay your price. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.